welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. I hope you are doing well. I wanted to bring on a gentleman. I've been trying to get him on the show for a couple of weeks, and he wrote an article on LinkedIn that I saw that talked about stress under COVID, and in his unique space where he basically operates, I wanted to get his take on that and also what some people are dealing with. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in my friend, David Rohlander, who is also the CEO coach. And I want to talk to David about what he was talking about regarding to this very real situation as far as when it comes to stress under COVID. It's been a number of months now. And David, how are you?
Well, hello there. How are you?
Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good.
I'm good. I was just saying that, you wrote an interesting article on LinkedIn, and it was in regards to stress and what's going on under COVID, and that it's really very real right now for many people, because I think, for me at least, when this first started, we're thinking it's a temporary situation. I'm going to just adjust to this. It'll be a week to 10 days, whatever. And, we've got a flu season kind of thing and we're done. But it has definitely now taken on we're almost 6 months into it. And it has affected every part of life, business life, personal life. And I thought your take was very astute when you wrote it. So before we get to that, though, if you wouldn't mind, for those who don't know you, would you take a minute and just give people a little bit of background on yourself and what you do, and why I said that your perspective, the spot that you're in, actually gives a very interesting vantage point to this question.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, Red. I have kind of an eclectic background, or a convoluted background, if you will.
Okay.
I was the soft side of me. I was an entertainer as a child. I was a singer, and then I became, in college, I was a literature history major. Okay. So soft stuff, nebulous, philosophical, soft things. And then at that time, we didn't have COVID, but we had a situation going on in Southeast Asia called the Vietnam War.
Right.
And they were drafting people into the army. And in my college class, there was a fellow that was married and had a child, and they drafted him. And I said, whoa, I don't want to go in the army and crawl around in the mud. It's just not my style. So what I did way back in 1960, probably 62 or so, I joined the U.S. Navy Reserve in Santa Barbara, California. And so I used to go to meetings once a month. And then I ended up going on a cruise out of Long Beach on a destroyer, which was quite an eventful experience for me. And then I came back, and I was back on my college campus in Santa Barbara at Westmont College, and reading books and talking about history and singing and things. And the recruiters were on the campus. Mm-hmm. And I stopped and looked at one and was looking at the pictures, and this happened to be the Air Force recruiter. And he says, "Hey, son, you want to join?" I said, "No, I can't do that." He said, "What do you mean you can't do that? You look healthy and whatever." I said, "No, I'm already in the Navy Reserve." And he said, "That doesn't matter. Join the A team, the best, the Air Force." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "I'm serious as a heart attack." And I had an experience on the cruise, which I won't bore you with, but basically it was, it was similar to the stories you hear about of what happens to pretty boys in jail. I'll leave it at that, except this was the United States Navy.
Yeah.
And I was only a spectator, fortunately, but it really scrambled my eggs, if you will.
I could imagine.
I was about 19 years old, and I was going to a Christian college, and I go to the U.S. Navy, and I see this unbelievable situation. And then months later, this Air Force guy says, "Hey, why don't you join and you can transfer?" I said, "Are you serious?" So I ended up transferring to the Air Force.
Interesting.
And became a pilot. And I was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, reconnaissance pilot, flying RF-4Cs, flew 208 combat missions, lost a lot of my good friends. I came out unscathed, hallelujah. Then I went to Europe for 3 years, and then I finally got got out of the Air Force after my obligation was up.
Yeah.
And I went back to school and got an MBA in finance because I was now thinking that I needed to go earn some money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went for the MBA, and then I was with Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith for almost 10 years as a broker, stockbroker. We used to call them stockbrokers.
Right.
Now we call them financial analysts or
Financial analysts and planners, yeah.
or all that
Yeah.
gobbledygook. But basically in fact, they don't really do what I did. We used to actually buy and sell and stuff. Now they just acquire money and bring it in, and other people.
Well, you and I have a common friend that I always refer to when I mention him as being one of the very few people I know that are still like trading places type of stockbroker.
Oh, really?
You know who I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, whenever I talk about John, he goes, what does he do? I said, well, trading places, like actually commodities, actual broker.
Yeah.
The industry has definitely changed a lot. When did you start with Merrill Lynch? What years are we talking about, David?
I started with Merrill Lynch in 1970, and I left in 79.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good stretch. Were you? So I'm gathering.
I started as your normal retail broker, licensed in everything, commodities and stocks and bond, everything.
Right.
And then they tried to do insurance, and they did it for a while, and then they basically said this doesn't work for us.
Yeah, I remember.
So we got out of insurance. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
And then I started. I was starting to get just a little. I think I was getting a little bit bored.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I was doing. I did very, very well. I made a lot of money, which was the objective, and I helped a lot of people. I used to do a lot of seminars because I'm a speaker. I've always been a speaker, kind of, and so I did a lot of seminars on estate planning, and I'd bring in accountants and attorneys to answer technical questions of the people I had at the seminar.
Right.
And so I got to meet a lot of people by doing that, and a lot of professionals. By professionals, I mean CPAs and attorneys,
right,
and all that kind of.
Well, complementary services to what you were offering.
Those guys. So I got to know a lot of them, which I still know. I was on hospital boards, and doing all the right things to develop a wealth business.
So would you say that board got bored, kind of the familiarity, because that's a very real thing. I can relate. Like, if something starts to becoming very familiar, very rote almost, it kind of loses the enthusiasm for me as well.
Well, it was just all about money. And I said, there's more to life than money.
Right.
And I was spending all my time trying to figure out how to make money and helping people make money, which is a wonderful thing. The only time money is a real issue is if you don't have enough of it.
Absolutely.
I believe. And so I was totally into the money game. And then I got intrigued by doing some other things. I got involved in real estate and real estate developing. And I got involved in that because I was going to build a school. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to build a school. And so I was looking for land to build a school. And
what kind of school?
I was doing well. Huh?
What kind of school?
An elementary school.
Oh, elementary school.
Just regular elementary school. My wife was a teacher, and she was annoyed and bored with all the bureaucratic BS that is typical of administration or of education in America today.
Yeah. It's so how did, and because.
So I said, why don't we build a school? So I started looking for land, and I ended up getting finding a 6-acre piece of land right on the freeway, the 55 freeway, if you know that.
I know where the 55 freeway. I'm just imagining where you found 6 acres of land on the 55.
It was Caltrans excess freeway land. So they had bought a bunch of land for exits and on-ramps.
Right.
And they had 6 acres extra, so they decided to sell it. So they sold it, and it was a sealed bid, and I happened to win. Mm. So I became instantly a boy developer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 6 acres in the middle of Orange County. Yeah, you're a developer.
Yeah, no, it was really sweet, and it's probably the best deal. When you think of a deal, it's probably the best deal I've ever made in my life. And I just kind of fell into it. So God smiled, or I was lucky, or call it whatever you want to call it. I was a successful.
Good things happen to good people.
Yeah.
So what happened in the school? Did you go to school?
I then got to I offered it to Merrill Lynch. I said, hey, Merrill, because I was doing a lot of real estate things with Merrill at the time. I was a regional tax investment specialist, so I wasn't working so much in stocks and bonds. but in more esoteric investments.
Now,
Railroad.
were you operating out of that building, the old offices on in Santa Ana of?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I was. And this was just after or around the time that Orange County was going bankrupt. Bonds were becoming really hot and different
Right.
things were going on. So anyway, I got to the point where I offered Merrill the property. I said, why don't we put this in and offer this to our customers? And they said, hey, well, we appreciate your thinking of us, but it's too small for us. It was only 6 acres. So I said, well, okay. But I knew what I had, and it was really sweet. And so I literally had to make a choice. If I wanted to do anything with it, I couldn't stay with Merrill Lynch because of the restrictions. And so I had to make a choice between staying with Merrill Lynch or becoming a developer. And I chose to leave Merrill. I've been doing that for 10 years and start real estate developing, which I did, and made even more money doing that than I did at Merrill. So
You're talking about late 70s at this point, early 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sweet time for you to be getting into that game.
Yeah.
How long did you do real estate development?
Oh, maybe 6 years, something like that. 5, 6, 7 years.
So did you build a school?
No. That built 6 office buildings instead.
Right. That's amazing. Are they still standing? I'm just curious.
Beautiful project. It's right adjacent to the freeway. If you know the 55 freeway, Lincoln Avenue, it's called the Orchard.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 6 buildings with fireplaces. It's a real ego project. It's people that are there because of the lifestyle.
That's very cool. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So what happened after real estate lost its luster for you?
Well, then I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had been trying to help people. So I started to, I got involved in some personal development things. And
tell me more.
I responded. Like there was an offer for a free audio tape in the Wall Street Journal, Think and Grow Rich. And so I sent off for the free tape. And I ended up getting an invitation to come to Waco, Texas to meet a group called Leadership Management, LMI, Leadership Management Institute or whatever, I think. Okay. And it was part of SMI, which is Success Motivation Institute, all founded by a fellow by the name of Paul Meyer. Okay. Paul Meyer's note of distinction was he was the first person to think of putting an audio talking medium on a record, a vinyl record. Mm-hmm. And he put, instead of music, he put a talking voice, Earl Nightingale, Think and Grow Rich. And it sold like crazy. And so
Think and Grow Rich is infamous.
He ended up getting in the personal development business. And as we used to say, selling talking tapes and books. It then went to audio tapes, cassette players. In fact, I've got one right here. One of the, this is one of the manuals that you see that. So I developed my own. That I did that with them for a while, and then I said I can do this myself.
Right.
I've got a lot of education in management and business and economics and all that stuff. So why don't I? And so this is actually the Dynamics of Personal Leadership manual from SMI. So this is one of their original manuals, and it's great stuff.
I remember those. That wasn't that long ago, dude. That wasn't that long ago. That the medium. I mean, it's funny. We're sitting here basically using Zoom to have a conversation about whatever the heck we want to have a conversation about, and it's so easy to do. But it wasn't that long ago that things came in binders like that. Whether it was start off with tapes and then it became CDs and.
The same thing happened to the internet in my view, at least, when I remember talking to PeopleSoft, and they were basically selling boxes of CDs to get programs for if you want to do something on the internet, if you want to have a CRM, customer management system. You'd have to buy a box of CDs, then you have to put the CDs, and then they would charge money to help you figure out how to use the CDs, and that's where they started making all their money. And it was the same. That's the same transition, and the same thing's going on right now. We're having another transition.
So let's talk about it a little bit because you obviously you got into this business of coaching and sort of self-help or helping out people, and you were literally groomed in in it in the way that you just described. Where was there any part of it that appealed to you more, because it's such a varied area, right? Like, I mean, it's almost as varied as any individual that you're working with. Each case is probably different, right?
Well, I enjoy working one-on-one with individuals, and if you think about it, we all choose our environment, or what I call our context of where we want. And I found that I was most comfortable and I enjoyed a context or an environment of the boardroom, the executive, the CEO, the C-suite, in a real live organization, as opposed to a startup, or as opposed to in the catacombs of cubicles in a big organization. I enjoyed being in the boardroom most. And because of my financial background, I had a pretty good understanding of finance, with the MBA in finance, and then having been involved with Merrill so much. And an example of that, or a good example of that, is when I left Merrill Lynch to do this real estate thing. Most people were pretty shocked, because I was doing very well, and I enjoyed it. So I wasn't negative at all on Merrill Lynch. It had been a very positive experience.
No, you just made a decision.
There was a magazine back then called Orange County Business.
Mm-hmm.
And in September, they came out with a full page article on me as and I've got copies of it someplace, but anyway, of me being an investment advisor, a new breed of investment advisor, et cetera, all kinds of nice things. That was in September. In October, I resigned from Merrill Lynch. And I remember one of the brokers went and got a whole box of these magazines. And I came into my office one day, and he had spread them all over my desk, on my chair, on my bookcases, and all. There was a whole box of the magazines, Orange County Business, were all over my office. And they said, "What are you doing? How can you leave Merrill Lynch? You're just, you just hit this great milestone." And now
you walked away while you were on top, if you will.
Yeah, I did.
But I think,
a big fish in a very, very tiny little pond.
Yeah, but that's actually, that probably happens more often than not for people that are acutely aware of forward movement. I mean, I think, I look back at and being open to things happening, like being able to receive things as they happen. You were faced with a decision, and you made a decision based on seasoning, based on nuances, based on where you were probably at that point in your life. It's funny, it's trusting that judgment call at that time. I mean, and I mentioned this to you before we got on the air. I have an undergrad in economics. I started off wanting to be an engineer. Couldn't go do an engineering degree because my father is a civil engineer. His alma mater was a Jesuit university in Lebanon by the name of the American University of Beirut, which is a very well-known institution. And I was going to go do engineering at my.
You're Lebanese, is that right?
My mom was half Lebanese and half Iraqi, and my dad was Palestinian. We're born.
How do you pronounce your name in Lebanese?
Sorry?
Pronounce your name in Lebanese.
Well, it's Raad, which is basically thunder in Arabic. And it's a functional word in the Arabic language, and then Raad is the last name.
Raad.
Raad. Like there's a gap between the first
more of
name
an Raad.
Assume there's a slight break between the first A and the second A.
A slight who?
Break between the first A
and
the second.
Okay, Raad.
Raad. Yeah, exactly.
Raad.
Yeah, and then Rantus is the Gantus basically, and that's a family name that transcends over between Lebanon, in Jordan, in what was Palestine, Israel, and there's still members everywhere. There's actually one village in Lebanon that, thanks to Facebook, I found out a whole bunch of the people that live there are actually Gantuses, and they're all Greek Orthodox. So, yeah, it's, my mom was Catholic on one side, my dad's Greek Orthodox. I used to say I partied with the Greek Orthodox and felt guilty about it with the Catholics in the morning.
And see, my name, just for fun, my name is Swedish. Rohlander, and it's R-O with the two dots over the O, like a umlaut, like a German umlaut. Only it's Swedish. And,
where from in Sweden originally?
Örebro.
So my aunt,
or west of Stockholm.
So my aunt, who was born in Iraq, the youngest of the six kids, went and got her first degree in toxicology from the University of Uppsala in Sweden.
Oh, in Uppsala.
Yeah, Uppsala.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Now, you see, this ties right into what we were going to talk about, I think, a little bit. So I'm Swedish. My name is actually in Swedish. David is David.
David.
My middle name is George, DGR, right?
Yeah.
George in Swedish is Georg.
Yeah.
And then the last name is Rohlander, but the way they pronounce it, at least my attempt to pronounce it the way they do, is Rohlander. David Rohlander, right? So I've often, in fact, I did this in Santa Ana one time. There was, I guess this is the fighter pilot in me. I was doing a seminar for a bunch of people in government in Santa Ana, and there was a guy named, what was his name? Gerald, only in Spanish. How do you say it? Geraldo. So he says, I said, hi, Gerald. He said, no, it's Geraldo. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm David Rohlander, right? He kind of looked at me weird.
You thought you had me at Gerald.
Yeah, and he looked at me kind of weird and didn't, but that's, you were talking about the post that I put up about the stress that everybody's going through. And I just put up another post on LinkedIn, and I call it Civility Matters. And I talked about why aren't we being more civil? I'm not into the black lives or the blue lives or the green lives or whatever. Civility is what I was focused on. And why don't we have more civil? I have my ideas of why we don't, but the whole point was, why aren't we being more civil to one another? We're
you brought it up, David. You brought it up.
David, yeah.
So let's talk about that.
That means thanks so much.
Why are we not more civil?
Well, I believe, my opinion, right? One man's opinion. It's like something else. Everybody has one. My opinion is that it's a cultural thing that has been developed over many, many years, and it all ties to the breakdown of the family. It ties to the discarding of religion and faith, and the Me Too generation, and the whole idea that I want it all and I want it now. Yeah. People are not tolerant. They don't have patience. They don't want to wait. They want it instant gratification. Yeah. Is the deal. And if I can't have it now, then I'm going to riot because I want it now. I have a very good friend who's black, and we were chatting. Javon Thomas is his name. If he ever hears, he knows you. I know you probably know him. Yeah. But we were talking about this with another friend of mine who you might know, Adam Coffrin, who is a former police officer in Garden Grove. Sure. And the three of us were talking about what's going on. And Javon was saying that, as a black man, he's sick and tired of being treated, shall we say, as a second-class citizen. And he basically said, and I don't think I'm talking out of school by saying this, but he basically said that it's okay. It's about time we do something to change this. Right. I'm sick and tired of being treated like a, persona non grata. Yeah. And then Adam would explain his point of view as a police officer, what he sees is going on with all of these protests and riots and stuff. And I'm kind of sitting there in the middle, the mediator, just, oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's interesting. And then I ask a question or whatever, right. Stir the pot a little bit. But I'm not strongly involved in any of those positions. No, but you have the advantage of both points of view being shared in front of you and from a different perspectives. That's pretty good. Yeah, and what it is I'm into communication, and it's fascinating to see why people feel the way they do. And feelings are an interesting thing. I remember years ago, I was asked to teach a class in my son's, I think it was 4th grade. Okay. And part of the curriculum was to talk about feelings. And I've used this model many, many times. It's incredibly useful, but this is from a 4th grade class that I taught. And that is that feelings are not right or wrong. You feel the way you feel because that's how you feel. So feelings are not right or wrong. Everybody point number 2, everybody has feelings. I have feelings. You have feelings. The people listening or watching this have feelings.
Right.
Everybody has, Javon has feelings. Adam, the cop, had feelings.
Right.
Everybody has feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not right or wrong. And feelings come from past experience.
Sure.
So Javon was talking about how many times he'd been stopped and by cops and this and that. And then I remember I shared some experiences I've had with police officers that were, one of the group was kind of aggressive or obnoxious. And, there are some cops that are on a trip, right?
Yeah, I've had my own experiences with those. It really is. I could not say that it is any regional specific or any time specific. It just happens to be what it happens to be sometimes,
Yeah.
and certain common sense serves you well in those circumstances.
Yeah. So anyway, so the 4th point is that feelings can change.
Mm-hmm.
So feelings are not right or wrong. Everybody has feelings. Feelings are based on your past experience.
Sure.
And you've had, if you were ever born and raised in Lebanon, if I had been born and raised in Sweden, I would have a different point. But I was born and raised in New Jersey. So I understand Trump probably better than most because I lived in that same environment.
Right.
Blackboard jungle where the people are what they are. I mean, I lived in that. I was raised in that. Then I came to California, and I was really a fish out of water in California. One example was I was a singer, as I mentioned, and I had sung back east, and I got in a quartet at Westmont College. So I was the baritone, and we had a first, a second tenor, and a bass.
Yeah.
And every time we'd sing a word, not every time, but often when we'd sing a word, I would say one word and the other 3 guys were saying another word, just like Raad, right? As opposed to Rad.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I got beat up pretty bad about it. But I adapted, as Clint Eastwood says, right? Adapt, improvise, and overcome. And so I learned to adapt. And that's what that's civility too, is to learn to adapt and understand that everybody is different. Everybody is coming from a different place. And you can't really communicate effectively with another person unless you understand and empathize with their past experience.
That is critical. That is critical, David. And I think the word empathy is critical. I could not agree with you more. The other thing that you said that is also a critical word in my reality is tolerance, because and not associating necessarily tolerance with acceptance. It's like I don't have to accept your ways to tolerate them as long as they are within the realm of civility, right? And that's, I think, what is missing, and it's this sort of entrenched position. I mean, you mentioned New Jersey, and you mentioned being in California, but you also mentioned being in Germany. You also mentioned being, exposed to different things. You were in Vietnam. I mean, I think that is something that I wish we could just have a national program where we literally put kids on a plane, send them somewhere for 6 months to a year, because I have lived that. Okay, I did not set out to be born in Baghdad to a father who basically escaped at the formation of the state of Israel. My grandmother walking across the border under sniper fire to Lebanon to seek safety, then basically lived in Abu Dhabi when they were building infrastructure, bridges, and airports in a camp that looked like it was a British colonial camp with a mess hall and Indians who made curry, right? I mean, and then went to Kuwait, went to a Catholic school in Kuwait, nuns until I couldn't go anymore because it was not co-ed. Then went to an English system high school. And like, I didn't set out with this roadmap to follow, right? But I also know that I'm very grateful to the fact that it allowed me exposure that is very much part of what I filter life through.
What empowered you, do you think? What was the fulcrum or the key ingredient that empowered you to be able to adapt to all of those differences?
It's a very, very good question and a very interesting question. I don't know that I have a full, unique, like a succinct answer, I should say, but I will share this. When I came here, now, if you think about it in terms of duration of time, I was born in Baghdad. We moved to Abu Dhabi. I was relatively young. We were there for a short duration of time. My father's a civil engineer chasing the project wherever they are, growing in his career path. We lived in Kuwait probably for the longest period of time. Then I went to school in Switzerland because I couldn't go to that school I was telling you about to do an engineering degree. So I ended up doing a economics degree in a liberal arts school on the side of a mountain, American college in Switzerland, with about 300 people of every personality I was going to ever encounter in my life.
Yeah.
In a microcosm. Before Big Brother was around, we had a Big Brother in Switzerland, basically, right?
Right.
And then I came over here and I went from a school of 300 to temporarily, until I got into Claremont Graduate School, I spent 1/4 at Cal State Bakersfield, and I became one out of a thousands of number, from 300 to thousands of people, right? Talk about a culture shock. And from the side of the mountain, Switzerland, to the edge of the desert in Bakersfield, right?
Uh-huh.
And you don't realize while you're going through this that you are basically picking up not only adapting skills, but also a bit of a chameleon skills.
Sure.
Right. And I guess it's an adaptability skill, right? But when I remember when and you know, we were naturalized, you know, with the green cards way before we got them from Kuwait and through the embassy. My uncle's been in Chicago since 1965, so there wasn't like this, you know, pressure-driven immigration, right? It was a planned aspect. We're going to college in the States. My uncle's in Chicago. We went after our citizenship. But I found myself, David, at one point where I felt like I didn't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And
Sure.
It was pretty draining. It was a little depressing. Like you felt like you didn't have any roots anywhere, right? And obviously as time progressed, you know, I've spent more and more time in California, more and more time in the United States. Probably at this point, the longest I've ever lived anywhere has been in the States. But here's what was interesting. One day I woke up in the morning, and I could not tell you for whatever reason, the mindset of being that I don't feel like I belong anywhere shifted. It just shifted on a dime, and it became a position of strength. I came to the reality and the realization that I actually belonged everywhere.
Right. Instead of I don't belong anywhere, you discovered that you can belong wherever you want to belong.
Belong everywhere. And a true test to that was because I ended up doing a master's degree at Drucker. Then I ended up working on a construction project with a friend of my dad's who came over and started doing development in California. That's how we ended up in San Clemente. Then the economy crashed in 91. The real estate business crashed in 91. I go over and do a summer certificate program at an Interior Designers Institute in Newport Beach, arts and craft for 12 weeks, then do another degree, then end up moving to Atlanta to work for a #1 firm in industry for interior design. And I find myself in a position on a Friday afternoon where they come to me in a panic state. The top guy and the next in command come to me in a panic state about the fact that they need to put somebody on a job site in the middle of the Indian Ocean on the island of Mauritius within like 2 weeks of when this conversation is taking place, because the guy who's the owner of the property, Sol Kersner, God rest his soul, he passed away last year, who's the head of what is now known as the one and only hotel chain, used to be known as Sun International. This was the property that he was renovating. This was the first property he had ever purchased. It had been 25 years that he had owned it. And by God, Sol Kersner was going to have a Christmas party. And he sent out the invitations already. And so they needed to have boots on the ground in order to make sure that this happened. So they're struggling. This is October of 98. They're struggling to find somebody to send out they can't find somebody from the LA office, the London office, the Jakarta office. I'm in Atlanta at that time. And I go, three months in Mauritius, a white sand beached island with scuba gear. Do I need to rent it, or do I need to ship it with me? That was the only question in my mind. And I asked them, I said, can I get back to you on Monday? And I literally went, and at that time, you can imagine what the internet was in 98, right? I'm like searching to see if I can actually rent, or do I have to bring my scuba gear with me? That's the only thought that kept across my mind. But what happened is when I got I had a week to learn about the project. I had never touched this project before. I was put on a plane. My go-to plan was, if they asked me any questions when I got there that I couldn't answer, I would pretend to have jet lag and call the office overnight with the time difference and have an answer for them the next day, right? But literally was airdropped on this island, David, which is a beautiful location. Anybody who hasn't been to Mauritius needs to go to Mauritius. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's God, probably about like almost 24 hours of flight through Europe, like 12 hours each way. But I was literally airdropped on this island.
Uh-huh.
And
Great.
over the course of, I was there for 3 months. I'm not bragging. I will tell you that survival skills kicked in, and that also experience of having lived with my dad, on job sites in third world countries, right?
Sure.
I went into immediate adaptability mode, and within a month and a half, had the island wired.
Uh-huh. No, I believe you.
Right. So so I look back at that and I go, whenever I have a situation where I am doubting my ability to adapt, I remind myself, I mean, that was a pleasant experience, right? And sometimes they're not, it's not a pleasant experience. And you and I started talking about this a little bit before, and I want to kind of switch to this sort of stress that people are going through right now. But you and I have been through, you more than me, through transitional points of life, through paradigm shifts, whether they are self-driven or, put upon us. And we can look back and go, we made it through. Maybe we scuffed a knee. Maybe we lost something in the process. We gained knowledge as well, or whatever. And so when it comes to something like what we're going through right now collectively in the last 5 or 6 months, as hard as it is to, and as demanding it is for us to change our approach, and it's difficult. I mean, I lost a parent in May. My dad is basically at 84 years old. This has not been an easy period, but there's something about the fact that you have weathered previous storms.
Right. It's your past experience.
That gives you a little sense of strength. And so I look at some of the people that have owned their businesses maybe for the last, 10, 15 years, right?
Right.
They haven't really had a major crisis. And so you probably have been addressing a lot of this stuff with some of your clients, right? I mean, you're dealing with these business owners that are...
Well, exactly. And see, what I have done is I've kind of categorized and compartmentalized many of those, like you have, many of those experiences, and gotten some learning from different experiences. And I now market that as the CEO's coach, because it's as many of my clients say, well, gee, I don't know. Hey, ask Dave Rohlander. He's probably been there, or he probably knows. Because I've just done so many crazy things that, it makes it very, very helpful to be a CEO coach, because I said, well, no, I understand how you feel. I've been there. I said, what do you mean? Well, I've been there. I understand. Let me share what I learned.
So what would, from the wealth of your sort of wisdom and background in terms of experience, okay, what would you say are some of maybe the key 3 things that people should be cultivating, or be like a muscle working right now as we go through this, that would serve them well coming out of it, and to sort of deal with this, to survive this?
Well, I think probably number 1 is to adapt, improvise, and overcome, to be trite and use a movie slogan, but
you can use Clint anytime you want.
Yeah, but it is absolutely true, is you need to learn to adapt. And the way you adapt, it goes back to my pilot training, we practice emergency procedures. When we come to, every morning at 5:30 in the morning, you would report to your squadron, and you'd sit at a table with your instructor, and then the squadron commander would get up in front and it'd say, Rohlander, engine fire and flight. And I'd have to stand up in a brace and recite, what do you do when you have an engine fire and flight? Mm-hmm. Well, there's one emergency procedure that is, it's called the general emergency procedure, or the overarching, whatever you want to call it. Depending on who you talk to, it's the fundamental basis of emergency procedures. And that is analyze the situation, maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, take appropriate corrective action. And the reason for that, if you know anything about flying, or those in your audience that know anything about flying, you know that you need to maintain flying the airplane, even in an emergency. And many inexperienced pilots, when they get in an emergency, they start flying the radio. What am I going to do? I don't know what I'm doing. Right? And they go crazy. And they forget that their primary number 1 job is to fly the airplane. And
that's very good, by the way.
In
fly
order
the airplane,
to fly
don't fly the radio. I like it.
in order to fly the airplane in an emergency, we used to do what we call disorientation, right? And you'd put a hood over your head, and then the instructor would take the plane and he'd very slowly fly it around like this, and then he'd go up like this and over like this, and maybe get you in a position like this. And because of the way the inner ear works, the cilia in the inner ear, if you do it very slowly, you don't feel the changes. And if you've got a hood and you can't see anything, and if he does it smoothly, you think you're maybe like this, but you think, based on the little hairs in your ear, you think that you're flying straight and level.
Yeah, you think you're fine.
You think everything is great.
Right.
You're just flying like this, and in reality, you're like this, right? And so then he says, okay, you got it. And he yanks the hood off your head, and you have to fly the airplane. And you don't know where the F you are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what's going on.
Yep.
So what you always do is you fundamentally go to one instrument, which was right in the middle of the dashboard, right in the middle, there's this instrument. It's light on top. There's a line across the middle. It's a ball. And on the bottom, it's dark. And then the little incremental numbers, right?
Right.
And it's called the ADI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a gyro. And it's like the globe.
Yeah.
And it shows you. And if you're climbing, you're going to see that you're going to see mostly light.
Right.
If you're going down, you're going to see dark. That's
right.
Like the earth, right? If you're turning right, you're going to see the angle, or left, you're going to see the angle the other way.
Right.
And then, so you go to that instrument as the fundamental instrument, because you want to maintain, if you were like this, what you'd see is the globe would be all light.
Right.
And even though you feel you're stable, you have to push the nose over in order to level out, to get into level flight. Well, what's interesting is that it's a globe, right? It's just like this. It's just like this. It's like a little globe.
Yeah.
But what is it? It's the ADI. And what do you think ADI stands for?
What does it stand for?
Attitude Directional Indicator. What is the attitude of the aircraft, and what direction are you going? And when you're in an emergency,
are you saying attitude or altitude?
Attitude.
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 That's pretty good.
Attitude Directional Indicators. So when everything is going bananas,
check your
a deep
attitude.
breath, fly the airplane, maintain your emotional attitude control.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath and say, what is going on?
Well,
we were supposed to talk a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I had an experience, right? I got out of bed.
How are you feeling? You feeling okay?
I'm feeling great. I got out of bed and I was walking down the hall. I took 3 steps down the hall to go to the restroom. And all of a sudden, I had no breath. I could not breathe. There was nothing. I mean, nothing. And I could have freaked out. I could have yelled and screamed or whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I deliberately chose, no. I weaseled my way in and sat down on the commode. And I got into heavy breathing slowly. And I gradually was able to get my breath back. Okay? But I maintained my composure, or my attitude.
Well, I think that's.
I effectively almost died. I was looking the Grim Reaper right in the eyeball. Pulmonary embolism is what I had.
Yeah, it was a serious situation.
But I maintained emotional control. And that's conditioning. That's something that you can train for. That's something I learned it in pilot training. If somebody walked in the room right now with a gun, I would maintain emotional control. Well, hi there. What is it you want?
Well, I mean, we say it almost to the point of being flippant, right? About the fact that you should not be reactive. That the minute you become reactive to a situation, you actually lose whatever control you may have of the outcome, right? And it's proactive is a condition, and you're talking about it in terms of like conditioning yourself to be ready to deal with situations. That's sort of part of being proactive. Like, you may not know what the situation is, but you could definitely prepare yourself so that that's the space you go to when you are faced with a situation. And I think you're right. I think when you've been exposed and experienced things, and maybe you've had a chance to have diversity of experience, and if you're fortunate enough to have geographical diversity of experience and cultural differences and all these factors that factor in, then without a conscious effort, you may be developing those skills, right? But for those who are not only maybe have not had that opportunity, David, but also find themselves right now in a situation that is seemingly, and rightfully so, overwhelming, right? And the variables are constantly changing. Like we just added another variable this month about kids going back to school and not going back to school in full time. Like, there's this constant moving thing that's happening over the last few months. How do you recommend to people that find themselves in that situation, what can they do so that they can better manage that? Because again, it's not happening only on a personal level. Whatever's happening with me on a personal level is also going to permeate through to my business side. It's going to permeate to my other relationships.
Absolutely.
And I need to be aware that at some point this is going to subside. But what condition am I going to be in, and my relationship and my business is going to be in when this thing settles? Right now, we're sort of in a turbulent storm, currents that are changing direction. What can people do?
Number one, and this sounds embarrassingly simple, but it's true. Breathe. Take a slow, deep breath. Breathe through the nose and exhale, and count to 10 or do whatever you want to do. And just realize that I'm stressed out. It's just like you when you fly, you learn to identify oxygen starvation, hypoxia. Your fingers change, they go blue instead of red, and you actually go into a pressure chamber and you lose oxygen, or you lose the ability to breathe. And what I had, this pulmonary embolism, was different than that, but it wasn't that much different. It was similar in that there was oxygen starvation, and you have to just realize that you can't freak.
It's funny about breathing.
That's a mind conditioning element that you have to train for, I believe.
Well, and practice it, and that's an easy one to practice if you really do that. Yeah, and I find that when you do that with breathing, especially, that if you really are focused on your breathing, it's almost impossible to be distracted by anything else if you're genuinely focused on your breathing. Because if you're actually literally aware of your breathing and you're having a breathing exercise and you're sort of like doing a count of, let's say, 7 in and 12 out, or whatever it is, right, that you do, it is almost difficult for your brain to do anything else. And in doing so, you're almost like tricking your brain to let go of that source of stress momentarily.
Well, what happens when you have that stress is the amygdala, which is right here and here on either side of your head. It's the little squirts adrenaline, and your body physically changes. And what you have to do is you have to let the body calm down. And the chemicals in your body have to gradually shift in order for your brain and your consciousness to think again, because your brain gets flooded, and it's a physical, a chemical, and a physical thing that happens. And so
I was advised, for the first time in my life, last couple of years, I started experiencing a bit of a panic attack, and it's not common, not usual. It's not constantly recurring, but on occasion, I would just have, and it was bizarre. The first time I experienced it, I thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
I literally went to the urgent care and they strapped me to an EKG, and we did it once and twice. And, it was like, I was really concerned. I mean, you get older and you're like, okay, what's going on? Right. And I enjoy a good cigar and a red steak. So I'm like, let's just be responsible here. Right. I will tell you, it's funny because after all of that, the person just said to me, listen, when next time you feel this, to your point, you have a mindset, a place to go. You know what you're going to do, right? I said, lay down and make sure that your legs are higher than your heart. And I'm like, what kind of bumbo jumbo is that bullshit, right? Am I not supposed to take something? He said, no, because what happens, to your point, is when your metaphysical reaction to a situation like that is the blood is pumping away from your brain. And so if you actually literally put your legs up higher, you flood your heart and your brain with the blood, and it basically short circuits the system. And I will tell you from personal experience, in the most severe situations, when I do that for something like 10 minutes, I almost end up in a meditative state where I just kind of chill out and relax and fall asleep.
That's great. That's great.
Right. And but that is, to your point. I think some people are going to say, well, stress is part of life, deal with it. But how? And I think those are the things, like we were talking about, the tolerance, the civility. Those are conscious decisions, right? That you have to condition yourself.
It is a conscious decision. And you have to realize that you do have the power to make that decision. And that you get that from training, practice.
Right, because under the circumstances when stress is happening or whatever it is that's going on, unless you have already put in your head that I still have the ability to respond to this in a manner that I have control over. May not have control over the result that happens, but I have control over what it is that I do in those situations. Unless I do that, I'm kind of like a rudderless boat, right in the middle of a storm. Yeah. I don't know which way it's going to go.
I had, and it works in all different kinds of situations. I had a situation a few years ago where I had a .com, and my partner, who had been a client of mine, Chris Knutson is his name, great guy. His wife died of cancer, and it was a slow death. And so during that process of her sickness, she had an opportunity to plan how she wanted to be remembered. And she requested to have me sing in her funeral. And I remember when he called and asked me if I would sing at her funeral, I said, "Oh, Chris, I can't do that, man. That'd be she's too close. I mean, I don't think and he said, "Well, think about it." So I thought about it, and I decided that I should do it. And so I called him back and said yes. And I remember when I had the opportunity to do it, it was down San Diego. I went down early and I checked out the whole church or the auditorium. I don't remember whether it was an auditorium, it wasn't a church. But anyway, I checked it all out, walked around, got comfortable with it. And then I sat down in the front row. This was a good hour before anybody arrived. And I did breathing. And I breathed through my nose and exhaled through my mouth. Yeah. And I got myself totally, if you will, in a state, meditating, whatever it was. And when it was time for my performance at the funeral, I stood up and it went without a hitch. It went just, went as best I can, but I'm not a Pavarotti or something, but it went very well, right? I was calm and everything worked out fine.
Well, you acclimated yourself to the situation too, right?
What's that?
You acclimated.
Yeah.
You went in there and you acclimated to the environment. That was another thing that you did. And your breathing was the conduit to acclimate to the environment. And without having all the other distractions of people genuinely showing up and to give their condolences and their respects, you had that sense of space so that you didn't literally walk into that room with it being full and then have to acclimate.
No, I planned ahead. Yeah. I planned ahead. See,
you knew you had to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
I think we talked about with the shows, like, well, what we're going to talk about, and I said, well, we'll figure it out. And I think really anybody who's listening, the thing that we're trying to, I think, convey is that we don't know what's going to happen in month 7 of COVID. I don't know what's going to happen in month 8 of COVID. I don't even know if this is going to be over complete. I don't think it's going to be completely over. I think the residual effects of this period is going to be with us for a while. Some of the results of it will probably be negative ones that we want to forget as quickly as possible, but there may be some positive stuff like reconnection with people, the ability to breathe instead of be constantly running, right?
Right.
There's going to be some positives that come out of this. I'll just share with you personally, if I was running 1 million miles a minute like I was before, when this happened, my mother passing away, my father, needing to take care of, like, my focus changing, I look at COVID as being a bit of a blessing because it actually slowed things down enough for me not to have to go from 100 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour in order to basically shift gears. There's going to be, but the point is, we don't know what happens tomorrow. We don't know what happens. What we do know is, to your point, and that's why you're the coach, is that there's certain things that we can prepare for, train to do, right? And remind ourselves that just because something is happening, we don't have to react to it. We just need to condition ourselves to know what to do next as a smart first step, and then figure out the rest. I mean, I love the fact, because I would have sworn that gyro that you were talking about would have been called, the A would have stood for altitude. I would have sworn that, right? But I find it ironically appropriate that it stands for attitude.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do is check your attitude. I mean, we got a couple of things from David today. Okay, check your attitude. Number first thing you do, check your attitude. Fly the plane, not fly the radio.
Right.
And you can apply that on a lot of stuff without a plane being involved, right? So how do people find out about what your service is and get a hold of you, David?
Well, I'm on the internet, and I'm on LinkedIn, and it's David, and you've had the name up, thank you. It's David Rohlander, R-O-H, because it's Swedish, right? R-O-H-L-A-N-D-E-R, Rohlander. David Rohlander, and I'm all over the internet. My phone number is, call my cell phone, it's 714-307-4438, or just put in David Rohlander. Now you might, if you just put in Rohlander, just the last name, you will discover a world-class artist who happens to be my son, who is got some amazing artwork for sale. He teaches at Art Center in Pasadena, which is the finest art school on the planet.
I will definitely check it out. It's a good one to know.
Just check it out, Rohlander.com. He does some great work.
What's his first name?
Nathan
Rohlander. Okay. Well, David, I appreciate you taking some time, my friend. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Delightful. I love to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you around. I am really grateful that you took the time. It really made my day. So again, people, fly the plane, don't fly the radio, and check your attitude. That's the first thing you do. Check your attitude. Think of that gyro. That's not altitude, that's attitude. Yeah. So David, thank you very much, man. I will see you soon, I'm sure, in person. And
I'll see you at a cigar event. I'm not supposed to be smoking cigars anymore, but maybe we'll see you at one.
We're supposed to actually gather tonight, if you're around.
Where?
At the club.
At Center Club?
Yeah, at Center Club. Not any John thing. It's just a bunch of people are just going to be there. So,
oh really?
If you are up for it, by all means, come join us. I'm going to plan to be there. I might even go there a little earlier, to be honest, and just kind of park it. Again.
What time?
It's I'll probably be there about maybe 3-4 o'clock.
Oh, really? Early? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just do what we normally do as entrepreneurs. I'm gonna work out of wherever I am. Okay. So, and if you're there, I'd love to follow up this conversation. And for anybody who's listening and is around, you know how to get a hold of David now, and get a hold of me. But I really enjoyed this very much, and so thank you very much, my friend, for your time.
My pleasure. You take care.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.